Have you ever felt the weight of every word you've ever spoken, only to realize that the real strength lies in the silence that follows? Imagine a moment so powerful that no sentence can capture its depth, because sometimes the most profound truths are whispered by the quiet. There comes a pivotal moment in each of our lives when our voice transcends mere noise. It dawns upon us that our voice now resonates with genuine purpose. In our earlier years, we talked to be heard over the din of competition and chaos. We raised our voices to stake our claims, to prove ourselves, to demand respect, to clarify our intentions, and to defend our dignity. Every word carried urgency and passion, for we were young, eager, and often impatient. But as time flows on, something sacred begins to settle within us. We start to perceive silence not as the absence of something like strength or vitality, but as a rare and treasured sanctuary. Silence becomes a place of refuge amid the endless clamor. It is not a weakness, but the hallmark of maturity. It is the testimony of a soul that has weathered storms, faced its fears, and emerged with the understanding that serenity often outweighs the impulse to be right. You realize you no longer have to voice every emotion swirling inside. You don't feel compelled to weigh in on every conversation, correct every misunderstanding, or stand up to every slight. Because over the years, you've discovered that truth has its own way of shining through without needing your spotlight. Consider this. How many times have you insisted on clarifying every detail, only to find that your explanations fell on deaf ears? Isn't there a stillness that brings clarity, a space where words, no matter how eloquent, lose their potency? When you've walked long enough through the corridors of life, you'll find that certain energies and exchanges aren't worth the breath to articulate. People who are not ready to understand your silence, what does that truly matter? No matter, they can't diminish its power. In many ways, silence speaks more eloquently than the grandest speeches ever could. After decades of pleading, teaching, warning, and trying to guide you, come to recognize if they still don't grasp it, maybe they're not meant to. In the later chapters of life, you'll discover that you no longer chase validation in noisy applause or petty disputes. The spotlight loses its appeal. You no longer crave the gratitude of a crowd. The fleeting buzz of social attention leaves you longing for something deeper. What you hunger for instead is peace, clarity, and stillness. You yearn for undisturbed moments where it's just you, and perhaps something greater where you don't have to defend your heart or delineate every intention. And let me share a secret: that serene stillness is where real power is forged. That is where true wisdom takes root, not in the uproar of contention, but in the silent spaces between words. In our youth, we treat our voice like a mighty instrument, an arsenal of persuasion. We believe we must project ourselves to shape our world. Yet with age, we learn silence is often our greatest shield. Why? Because you can't misinterpret what isn't spoken. You don't hand over your words for someone else to twist. When you guard your silence, your spirit grows unassailable. Think about this strange paradox. When the outer world is chaotic, noise seems to scream louder. But the real sanctuary lies within the hush of our own being. In that quiet, we begin to hear differently: how birds sound at dawn, how our heart beats in reflection, how long-buried thoughts surface to the surface. We feel more intricately attuned to ourselves and the world around us. Your heart becomes more guarded, but not because you've grown cold. Rather, you're learning to shelter the sacredness within you. You realize that your emotions and experiences deserve respect. You no longer scatter them on every passerby's doorstep. Instead, you cradle them. They are yours. There's a profound peace that washes over you when you finally give up explaining yourself to those who are determined to misunderstand. You stop dancing to someone else's expectations. You stop proving your worth to those who cannot appreciate your essence. Do you remember the first time you threw your arms up in frustration, demanding someone just get it? And later, finding that same energy dissipating into emptiness. That moment reveals something extraordinary. Your silence had more impact than all your words combined. Let me paint this scene. You're standing on a mist-laced mountain at dawn dew, glistening on the grass, and you're wrapped in a coat of silence so thick you can feel it wrap around your bones. No words, nothing to assert. Just the quiet wind that knows nothing but existence. It's in those moments when your voice takes a back seat that the world's hushed splendor demands you listen. And that listening becomes a conversation more profound than any speech. Isn't that wild? You spend half your life shouting so people will hear you. Then in the other half you find out the loudest message is your own calm. This isn't surrender. Oh no. This is the opposite of giving up. This is victory. It's a revelation. It's the armor of someone who has understood enough not to scatter their light in every direction. It's the quiet confidence of a spirit that knows I have value even in silence. So if you're watching this, wondering if you should speak, pause. Ask yourself, will these words heal or harm? Are you saying them to be understood or just heard? Does the silence protect your dignity or mute it? Because silence is not just the absence of speech, it's the presence of intent. It's the embodiment of choice. Silence is the blank canvas of your next masterpiece. In the silence, learn to thrive. Let your soul breathe. Let your spirit rise. And let your peace echo louder than any shout ever could. There's a quiet kind of healing, soft, deep, powerful, that begins the moment you stop feeling the need to respond to every jab thrown your way. It's the day you no longer chase every argument, no longer burn your energy, explaining, correcting, defending. It's the day you finally decide not every battle is mine to fight. Because something shifts when you reach a certain stage in life. Your struggles aren't just external anymore. The fights are no longer physical. They're spiritual. You no longer battle with fists or words. You fight on a different battlefield, now one that requires deeper strength. You fight through stillness, through surrender, through prayer. It may sound strange to those who are still in the thick of their striving, but silence. Real silence is not a retreat. It's a strategy. It's not passivity. It's power in a purer form. You see, when you hold your tongue, when you take a breath, instead of reacting, you're not giving up. You're giving room for something bigger than you to step in. For God to speak, to move, to do what only He can do. Because here's the truth. Just because you're silent doesn't mean you're unaware. Just because you've stopped speaking doesn't mean you've stopped seeing. On the contrary, it often means you're seeing more than ever. It means you've grown wise enough to know that timing reveals truth better than any argument ever will. That not every situation requires your voice, some require your vision. And vision gets clearer when the noise quiets down. You begin to realize discernment, that sacred inner knowing, doesn't grow in the heat of debate. It blossoms in silence, in stillness, in reflection. So if lately you feel yourself withdrawing a little, saying less, choosing your company more carefully, don't resist that pull. That's not you isolating yourself. That's alignment. That's your soul whispering, "We've said enough. Now it's time to listen. Now it's time to rest. Now it's time to be still. And know that you've earned this peace. Know that your silence is no longer a gap to be filled. It's a sanctuary you've built. And when people look at you wondering why you're quieter now, why your presence feels more reserved, more selective, just smile. Because you know something they don't. You know that your silence isn't empty, it's sacred. It's holy ground. It's the place where God meets you, comforts you, whispers to you in ways words never could. That silence is where you draw strength, not from the outside, but from within. There's a kind of beauty, simple but profound, that shows up in your life when you stop trying to please everyone, when you stop performing, when you finally get tired of proving your worth to people who never truly saw you. And as your steps slow, as your days grow quieter, you begin to see things with more clarity than ever before. No distractions, no pretending, just truth. One of the most life-changing realizations you'll have in this season is this: not everyone deserves access to your spirit. Let that sink in. Not everyone deserves your words. Not everyone deserves your time, your energy, your essence. And that's not harsh, it's wise. You see, protecting your peace is not an act of selfishness. It's an act of survival. It's sacred stewardship of your soul. You can still love people and leave them alone. You can still wish them well, even as you walk away. You can still pray for someone and protect your peace at the same time. Because peace isn't something you stumble into one lucky morning. Peace is something you guard with intention, with boundaries, with boldness. Think about it, you've spent years giving of yourself, haven't you? Giving your strength, giving your compassion, giving your time, your energy, your wisdom, your grace. And while some received it with open hearts and grateful hands, others took it for granted. Some didn't come to grow with you. They came to take from you, to drain, to use. And you, with your generous soul, kept giving. But now it's different. Now you're learning to reserve what's sacred, to pour only into what pours back, to recognize who brings peace and who brings chaos. And with this awareness comes a beautiful kind of freedom. A permission, really. Permission to sit in your silence, to enjoy your solitude, to choose your battles, and to live with intention. So the next time someone asks, "Why don't you speak up like you used to?" smile and say nothing, because the peace you carry now, it was earned. And no one who hasn't walked your path could ever understand what it cost. This isn't the silence of defeat. This is the silence of someone who has learned what really matters and what doesn't. And perhaps the most powerful part of this journey is what happens next. Because once you've reclaimed your peace, once you've drawn those boundaries, you'll find yourself making a new kind of space. Not just for rest, not just for silence, but for joy, for purpose, for legacy. After all the noise you've silenced and the boundaries you've drawn, something even deeper begins to unfold: clarity about who truly belongs in your life and who doesn't. It took you years, decades maybe, to understand this one powerful truth. Just because someone needs you doesn't mean they're meant to stay in your life. That realization doesn't come easily. It comes through heartache, disappointment, and growth. You used to think that need equaled connection, that being needed meant being valued. But now you know some people are simply lessons, not lifelong assignments. At this point in life, your time, your energy, your peace, they're priceless. You don't have time to be drained anymore. You don't have space for endless arguments, for going in circles with people who've already made up their minds. You no longer feel the urge to explain your heart to those who are committed not to understanding, but to misunderstanding you. So what do you do now? You protect your peace, like it's sacred, because it is. You start to see your spirit, your mental space, your emotional clarity as something holy. Not everyone deserves a seat at your table, and you're finally okay with that. You don't owe anyone access to your energy just because they ask for it. You don't have to open your door, your heart, or your atmosphere to just anyone. And when your spirit becomes clean, free of bitterness, noise, guilt, you become acutely aware of anything that threatens that clarity. It could be a conversation, a person, even a thought. And suddenly, things you used to tolerate now feel too heavy to carry. That's why your silence increases. That's why your circle gets smaller. That's why solitude feels like a sanctuary. It's not that you've grown cold. Not at all. It's that you've grown careful. You no longer waste precious energy trying to repair people who find comfort in their brokenness. You've stopped exhausting yourself trying to prove your loyalty to those who never intended to value it in the first place. Loyalty only matters when it's mutual, and you've learned that lesson the hard way. If they can't see your worth now, chances are they never will. And if they chose to walk away, don't chase them. Let them go. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring about yourself. You see, chasing people, that's behind you. Convincing them, that's beneath you. Begging, that's no longer your language. Now you're in the business of preservation, of guarding the treasures God placed inside of you, of protecting your peace, your calling, your emotional capacity. And here's the truth. You are not obligated to carry what no longer belongs to you. Some burdens, no matter how familiar, are not yours to bear. Some conversations aren't worth continuing. Some relationships are not meant to be maintained. This doesn't make you heartless. It makes you wise. You've lived long enough to know that peace is far more valuable than mere company, and real peace. It never comes from trying to please everyone. It comes from pleasing God, from aligning your life with what's true, what's real, what brings you quiet strength instead of constant stress. You'll notice something beautiful when you stop letting people drain your energy. You start to get stronger. You stop feeling chronically tired, not just in your body, but in your soul. You sleep better. You breathe deeper. And you smile more, not the forced smile for appearances, but the quiet kind that comes from genuine release. Why? Because you're no longer carrying what was never meant for you. You've handed it over to God. The weight of what used to stress you out, keep you up, pull you down. And here's the amazing part. He handles it better than you ever could. There's a freedom that comes with letting go, a lightness in your step, a calm in your chest. And let me tell you, you've earned that freedom. You didn't stumble into it. You fought for it. You survived for it. These later years of your life, they are not a time for tolerating chaos. They are a time for building calm, a time for planting roots in peace, for sitting quietly, breathing deeply, and finally tasting the fruit of everything you endured. Because you've walked through fire. You stayed when others walked away. You held on when it would have been easier to let go. You were faithful even when it cost you everything. And now you deserve peace. Not just moments of it, but a life shaped around it. So if it feels like you're shedding more than you're gaining in this season, trust it. Sometimes God makes space by removing the noise, to make room for something far more beautiful purpose. You've come far enough now to know you deserve peace. Real peace. Not the kind that's negotiated or borrowed. The kind that wraps around you like a warm blanket at the end of a long, hard day. You deserve moments where no one is tugging at you, where nothing is expected, where your presence isn't a service to be performed. Moments when you're not solving someone else's storm, not holding up someone else's world. Just you resting, breathing, being. You deserve relationships that don't require constant explanation, where your silence isn't mistaken for distance, where your honesty isn't seen as conflict, where being yourself is more than enough and no one's keeping score. You deserve rest, not just for your body, but for your soul, for the part of you that's been on high alert for years, constantly giving, managing, adjusting, absorbing. And if stepping into that peace means you have to let some people go, then let them go. If it means staying quiet instead of defending yourself, let it be so. If it means fewer phone calls, fewer invitations, fewer exhausting conversations, then let it be. That isn't isolation. That's intention. Because protecting your peace means prioritizing your healing. And healing. It doesn't bloom in chaos. It doesn't thrive in noise. Healing happens in the stillness, in the sacred hush where your heart gets to breathe again, where you stop performing and start becoming. Healing grows in silence, in the spaces where you remember who you are in God, and you stop letting anyone shake that foundation. You've poured so much of yourself into others, encouraged them, lifted them, stood behind them when they couldn't stand on their own. But now it's time to stand for your own peace, to protect the very soul you've spent a lifetime nurturing in others. And here's a truth you've earned the right to accept: anyone who doesn't honor your peace doesn't deserve a place in your life. There's a quiet kind of freedom that arises when you stop expecting people to be who you always hoped they would be. That doesn't make you jaded, it makes you real. As you grow older, you begin to understand unspoken expectations can become heavy chains, and the longer you carry them, the more they weigh on your spirit. You expected loyalty from those you loved fiercely. You expected support from those you never left behind. You expected effort, presence, maybe even understanding. But sometimes, life doesn't return the love you gave. And that can hurt in ways words don't fully capture. But there comes a moment, a sacred moment, where you reach a crossroads. Not of bitterness, but of release. You take a breath and say, I'm done waiting. I'm done hoping for people to change. I'm done shrinking, bending, performing, just to be chosen. And in that exact moment, something shifts deep within you. Something sacred. You begin to reclaim yourself. You stop living to be seen and start living to feel whole. Not from pride, not from anger, but from healing, from wisdom, from finally understanding that your joy is not up for negotiation. Your peace is not conditional. Your worth is not dependent on someone else's approval. You've spent years giving your heart away in pieces. You offered your best to people who may have wanted your presence, but never truly valued your soul. And yes, that wounded you. It shaped you, but it also taught you a lesson you'll never forget. You cannot keep giving yourself away and still expect to feel whole. So now, in this sacred season of life, you're allowed to do what once felt impossible. You're allowed to hold something back. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to choose rest, solitude, boundaries. You're allowed to choose yourself, not from selfishness, but from wisdom. Not to escape, but to return to what really matters. You don't need permission to heal. You don't need validation to protect your joy. You don't need company just to fill silence. Because finally, you're learning that your peace, your space, your spirit, they were never meant to be currency for approval. They were meant to be honored. And as you begin to honor yourself in this new way, something beautiful starts to unfold, because peace is just the beginning. What your soul truly craves now is solitude with purpose. Not isolation, not loneliness, but quiet moments that feed your spirit. Mornings where the world hasn't yet demanded anything from you, and all you do is sit still, take a deep breath, and whisper, "Thank you, God, for another day." You need time not just to rest, but to reflect, to look back and see how far you've come, to trace the battle scars on your heart and realize they're not signs of weakness. They're proof that you survived, that you overcame, that you didn't break even when everything in you wanted to give up. You've walked through enough fire to know now joy doesn't come from people. It doesn't come from attention, validation, applause. It doesn't live in other people's opinions. No real joy bubbles up from within. From peace with your past, from grace in your present, and from a quiet but steady hope for your future. You begin to understand something powerful. When you let go of expectations, you make space for reality. You stop clinging to who you thought someone could become, and you start accepting them for who they really are. And that acceptance, it's not surrender. It's not failure. It's freedom. Because suddenly you're not trying to change anyone. You're not holding your breath waiting for them to grow, to apologize, to finally get it. You release the need to control, and in doing so, you release yourself. You start walking forward not because everyone made it right, but because you did. You choose joy, even if they never say sorry. You choose peace, even if they never return. You choose life, even if some days you have to walk it alone. Letting go isn't giving up, it's growing up. It's realizing that your happiness isn't buried in someone else's heart. It lives in the quiet daily decisions you make to honor your own. To look in the mirror and say, I matter. My needs matter. My peace matters. So now you no longer beg. You no longer chase. You no longer force yourself to fit into spaces that were never designed for you. You don't water yourself down just to be tolerated. You don't twist your truth to make others comfortable. You've endured too much, lost too much, learned too much to keep dimming your light for people who never saw its value. So now, you shine. Unapologetically. You speak less, but you love deeper. You're no longer performing. You're living freely. And that freedom didn't come easily. It came through pain, through lonely nights, through lessons that broke your heart wide open but left you stronger than ever. It cost you. But it was worth every tear. Because now you're no longer living to be loved. You're living because you already are by the one who never left, never lied, never let you down. So stop waiting. Stop waiting for people to meet you at the level of your love. Some won't, some can't, and some never intended to. And you know what? That's okay. You don't need them to anymore. Because now you found something deeper than approval. You found peace. You found wisdom. You found God. And with that, truly, you lack nothing. One of the greatest revelations you'll come to, especially in the later seasons of life, is this: peace doesn't always come with answers. Sometimes peace comes the moment you finally stop asking why they left, why they changed, why they never apologized, why the story didn't unfold the way you hoped. You stop searching for closure and find contentment instead. Because healing isn't always about finding the answers. Sometimes it's about finding the courage to move forward without them. When peace no longer depends on answers, you begin to release the weight of why. And that's where the real healing begins. For a long time, you carried those questions in your heart like stones. Heavy, silent, always there. Questions that sat in the quiet corners of your soul, unanswered and unrelenting. You wanted closure. You wanted clarity. You wanted something, anything, to make the pain make sense. Why did they walk away? Why did they change? Why did things unfold the way they did? But over time, you learned a hard truth. Some things never make sense. Some wounds won't come with explanations. Some endings don't come wrapped in neat conclusions. And that's where faith steps in. Because faith doesn't say, I understand now. Faith says, I trust, even when I don't. Even when it hurts. Even when the silence is deafening. Even when nothing adds up and your heart still aches. In this season of your life, trust becomes more than just a spiritual concept. It becomes your anchor, a lifeline in the unknown. Because once you've walked through storms that didn't destroy you, but forever changed you, you stop chasing answers and start leaning on something deeper. You lean on the one who held you when you thought you were falling. The one who stood beside you when you felt abandoned. The one who whispered strength into your spirit when all you could do was breathe and hold on. You begin to realize peace is not found in having all the answers. It's found in surrendering the ones you may never get. It's found in placing your aching whys into God's hands and saying, even if I never get the explanation, I'll still move forward. Even if they never say sorry, I'll still forgive. Even if I never understand, I'll still believe you've got me. That's not weakness. That's power. That's maturity of the soul. That's what it means to be strong on the inside, even when the heart still has cracks. because there are people who will never apologize, and you've got to forgive them anyway. There are wounds that will never be explained, and you've got to heal anyway. There are endings that won't come with closure, and you've got to let go anyway. Why? Because peace doesn't come from people. It comes from God. And it's a gift you get to choose to open it even when the world around you makes no sense. You've cried enough. You've replayed the memories, the conversations, the good moments that somehow led to goodbye. You've spent enough nights trying to pinpoint the moment it all shifted. But now it's time to release it. Not because it didn't matter, but because your peace matters more. You cannot carry the weight of what you may never understand and still walk freely into what's next. You just can't. It's too heavy, too costly, and your future deserves a lighter you. Sometimes closure doesn't come from others. It comes from you. You look at what broke you. You breathe. You forgive. You release. And you do it not for them, but for your own soul. You stop waiting for them to return and make things right. You stop hoping that one day they'll come with the words that soothe your scars. Because deep down, you know that moment may never come. And that's okay, because peace doesn't wait on them to fix it. Peace begins the moment you choose to stop bleeding over what you can't change. And once you choose that peace, once you lay down the burden of needing answers, you make space for something even greater joy, unconditional, unshakable joy. Once you let go of needing answers, peace doesn't just visit your life. It begins to settle in quietly and steadily, like sunlight breaking through clouds. Peace, at its core, is choosing to focus your eyes not on what's missing, but on what's still good, what's still possible, what's still beautiful in your life. And the truth is, there's still so much, even after the storms, even after the losses. Even in the silence, beauty remains. God isn't asking you to have everything figured out. He doesn't need a perfect plan or all the right words. He simply needs a heart that's open enough to keep trusting, to keep breathing, to keep walking even when the road doesn't make sense, even when the answers don't come, even when your soul feels like it's walking through fog. Because God is not intimidated by your confusion. He's not offended by your tears. He's not distant from your doubts. He sees you fully. And still He stays. He holds you not in spite of your heartbreak, but within it. And the most powerful truth, He never wastes pain. The parts of your story that make no sense now, one day, they'll become the most meaningful chapters in your testimony. The broken pieces will become proof of grace. The silence will turn into strength. And the pain, it will become purpose. So if you're in a season right now where nothing adds up, where your heart longs for clarity, but all you're met with is quiet, don't rush to fix it. Don't drown it out with distractions. Don't run. Instead, sit with it. Let the silence teach you. Let the stillness shape you. Let the questions refine you, not destroy you. And then, when it's time, release it. Because not everything is meant to be understood, but everything can be surrendered. And that surrender, that's when peace finally flows in. Not like a thunderstorm, but like a river, steady, calm, quiet. A river doesn't need to shout to be strong. It moves with power in its stillness. So does peace. In these quieter seasons of life, when the crowds have faded, when the chaos no longer calls your name, you begin to see something clearly. Your peace is sacred. And not everyone deserves access to it. You start seeing people differently, not with bitterness, but with wisdom, with a kind of clarity that only comes after you've been through the fire. You begin to realize that some people were only present in your life because you kept inviting them in. You were the one always initiating, always calling, always showing up. But now you're learning to stop opening the door out of habit. You're learning to protect your peace, even if it means distancing yourself from people you once loved deeply. And no, that's not pride. That's not bitterness. That's growth. Because you can't keep handing pieces of your heart to those who never valued it. You can't keep watering relationships that never tried to grow with you. That's not loyalty, that's self-neglect. You've grown too much to keep shrinking for others. You've been through too much to keep inviting in what unsettles your spirit. And so now, slowly but surely, you're learning to guard your space. Because real peace isn't found in being surrounded by people. It's found in knowing who to let close and who to let go. It's okay to step back. It's okay to become less available. Not because you're angry, not because you're bitter, but because you finally found something worth protecting: your energy, your sanity, your joy. You've spent years being everything to everybody. You've poured out love, time, wisdom, patience, even when your own cup was empty. But now, it's time to start pouring some of that love back into yourself. You've worn yourself out, haven't you? You've exhausted your spirit, trying to keep connections alive that only drained you in return. You kept pouring into others, hoping it would lead to deeper bonds, only to find yourself running on empty while they barely noticed your silence. But now things are different. Now you're learning to love without losing yourself, to bless people without having to carry them, to forgive without needing a dramatic reconciliation. And that's not cold. That's not unkind. That's what maturity looks like. You see, people often confuse kindness with obligation. They think that just because you're gentle, you'll always say yes. That just because you're loving, you'll always be available. But no, there comes a moment when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop justifying your desire for stillness, when you stop letting guilt pressure you into places your soul is begging to leave. Because peace costs what it costs, and you've already paid more than enough in the past to learn that not everyone belongs in your future. You've been in rooms where the atmosphere drained your spirit. You've had conversations that left you questioning your worth. You've bent over backward for people who never once met you halfway. And still, you gave. You showed up. You hoped. You kept believing. But not anymore. Not now. Now you guard your soul like it's sacred. Not because you've closed your heart, but because you've learned to be careful with it. Because the moment you start protecting your peace, you begin to discover what real peace actually feels like. It's not being surrounded by noise and praise. It's hearing that still small voice inside that says, "You don't have to stay where your soul feels tired. You are not responsible for fixing everyone. It's okay to choose yourself this time." And when that voice speaks, you listen. You follow. You trust. Because protecting your peace isn't rejection, it's preparation. Preparation for the next season, for the next calling, for the next elevation that God is guiding you into. And yes, that preparation may require release. Releasing relationships that no longer align. Releasing roles that drained your spirit. Releasing guilt that no longer belongs to you. You're not turning your back on people. You're turning your face toward what brings life. And here's the beauty in it all. When you begin to live this way, peace becomes your home. Not a fleeting escape. Not a temporary feeling, but a foundation you stand on. You don't owe anyone access to that peace. You don't have to justify the boundaries you've set. You don't need to apologize for needing space to breathe, to heal, to grow. If they don't understand, let them go. If they walk away, bless them. If they talk about you, forgive them. But never ever lower your guard just to make others comfortable. Because once you find true peace, you'll protect it fiercely. You'll treasure it deeply. And you'll realize peace isn't just the absence of chaos. It's the presence of God. It's the protection of wisdom. It's the reward of a healed soul. And remember this, some people are only meant to walk part of the journey with you. Their chapter in your story has served its purpose. Letting go of them isn't your loss, it's your liberation. Your peace is sacred. Protect it. Because in protecting your peace, you protect your purpose. And nothing matters more than that.